Hello and welcome. This is going to be episode 150 of the Kratom Sobriety podcast. I am here with Libby. How are you doing, Libby?
Truth be told, I am pretty tired today. I did not sleep super well last night. And so I guess that just speaks to the fact that even when we get off Kratom, everything isn't always perfect.
I
Which
can
actually
empathize with that.
yeah, reminds me of the topic I wanted to chat about today because I was recently looking through some old journal entries from back when I was on Kratom. And it was occurring to me all of the subtle ways that kratom steals from us. And so I have some things I wanted to contribute, but I'm curious about if you have anything to contribute or relate to that.
Oh, absolutely. And just when you brought that up now, it brings back a whole load of things that I was writing down in my own journal to try and convince myself to quit. And I think one short thing that I'll mention is just how subtle the things that Kratom can take from you can be. Even the simple joy for me of just going on a walk in nature, even just that. It's not the same. It takes away from, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but the rawness of it, just your connectedness to people, to things, to places, to nature, to birds, bees, insects, and even ants, the ants that are in my house. Not that there are any anymore. That problem has been dealt with. But anyway, I'll let you take it away from here because I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I was thinking about the ants. I was thinking about how, like, I would have to be high in order to do anything enjoyably because if anything was like worn off even slightly, I wasn't able to be present with friends and I wasn't able to be even like feeling well enough to show up for anything in my life that I normally like to. But it also stole things from me even when I was intoxicated, where like I couldn't watch a TV show or read while I was high. So it created this really weird paradox where I wasn't really happy when I was on it and I was really unhappy when I wasn't on it. And so like life just became so unbearable and it really stole my peace and serenity. It creates like this whole vortex in your head. So you're trying to navigate like not being high, all the things. So it was like very evident by reading these journal entries just how much it took. It just really stripped me of my humanity. Like all the things I wanted to be able to be present for were really stolen away. And so that was, yeah.
Do you think there was one specific event or maybe like going out with friends one day where it all hit home for you when you were writing these journal entries? Was there something that convinced you, oh man, I really should quit?
No, because for me, I always knew. I think my higher self or like my soul or whatever you want to consider was always, this is bad. This is bad. This is not right. You should stop this. So I always knew. And it just reading through this stuff, it was just so evident where like maybe in the day to day, even writing it out might not have been so evident. But reading it, I was like struck by just how I hadn't like no joy and no pleasure left.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
resonates with me. And I think on top of all of the joy and pleasure that it slowly takes away from you in the background, and on top of that, I just found it to be more than anything, such an interruption to my everyday life. And it was such an interruption to regular experiences. I think now I look at my life and I take for granted how quote unquote seamless it is. I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I do all the things that I do, I feed my cat, and nowhere in any of that morning plan includes needing to take kratom anymore because I feel like sick when I wake up in the morning. And I just take that for granted sometimes. So coming back to the things that it was taking away from us, it was taking just the general convenience of being alive without needing a substance to rely on away from me.
Absolutely. Like the constant planning about when you're going to take yours or how you're going to get more to take it on the right time or like going out of town and needing to have it before you leave town. Like all these ways that we were just navigating life. I don't know. For me, at least, I was navigating life like that. So,
I was in
yeah.
the same position too. Yeah,
We talk about it a lot too. The other thing was very evident was like the music and just the things that we used to enjoy that it takes you getting off of it to realize, oh my God, like this is so enjoyable now. Like I haven't even listened to music in months.
I
So,
know. Absolutely. And even the things that we don't tend to look forward to as a society, like going to work every day, even that
mm,
improves.
sure, my whole
Totally.
relationship with work improved. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to cover under that umbrella?
That was really it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me, Libby, and I look forward to this interview that's coming up. And we will see you next time.
Hello, welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. We're at episode 150, which is very exciting. And this is Charlie. And today we have a special guest who is actually celebrating a year off of Kratom. And she's our second Jazz, which is crazy. So we'll label this episode Jazzy just to differentiate from our earlier guest with the same name. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Jasmine. I do typically go by Jazz or Jazzy. A lot of people call me Jazzy, so I'm perfectly happy with that. And yeah, I think that's really cool. It's the 150th episode and my 1 year. Like, I love that. That's a cool synergy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what part of the country are you from, and what do you do with your everyday life?
I live in Colorado, in northern Colorado right now. I've been out here for almost 20 years. I'm not a native Coloradan. I was born in Chicago. My whole family was originally from Chicago, but my dad was a Marine. So we moved all the time as a kid. I've lived all over the country. Mostly grew up as a teenager in Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth. Ended up in Southern California when I was 19, and I met my now husband there, and he was from there. And we ended up out here in Colorado after we had our daughter because Orange County, California is a pretty expensive, pretty highly populated place to raise a family and try to buy a house or get ahead in life. It's just keeping up with the Joneses and it's tough. So we ended up out here in Fort Collins, which is a really cool college town, really beautiful, really close to the mountains, close to Denver, a lot of fun things to do out here. It's a awesome place to live. And so we've been out here, yeah, since, yeah, about 2005. And I am a restaurant manager. I opened a restaurant in the little old town area of my city 11 years ago. And it was a new concept for the owners. And I am the only person who's still there that's been there since day one. And I've been a huge part of the growth and development and success of that place. My daughter worked for me for 6 years. My son works for me now. I just hired him at the beginning of the year. I hired all my friends' kids. It's pretty cool. It's a good gig. It's tough, I'm going to be honest, coming off Kratom and staying there because I was on Kratom for 9 years. And so a lot of that time was spent at the restaurant. So that was challenging it's still challenging to navigate, but especially in the early days, just it was triggering to be there because I was so used to being high on Kratom all the time when I was there. Plus, it's just the schedule, managing a restaurant. It's a lot of late hours, and I don't have a healthy sleep routine, which I'd really like to have now that I'm not on Kratom. That's become so much more important to me, but we're working on it. I've got things that I'm considering doing and stuff like that, but that's about it.
Welcome from the mountain time zone.
It's beautiful here for sure, but there's also, yeah, the cold aspect. We have winter that feels like it lasts for 5 months where you're just not, unless you're a snowbird and you're out there skiing and snowboarding all winter, it can get a little cabin fevery.
Before we get into the kratom in your history with that, what do you do to relax?
I love to be outside. Nature is like such a therapeutic thing for me. I like to hike. I like to go see music. That's not necessarily relaxing for everybody, but music is a big part of my life. I love to write. I love to write poetry. I'm actually working on writing a book, but that's slow going right now. I love to be outside working in the garden, planting flowers, just being out in the sunshine when we do have the good weather, stuff like that.
All
I
right.
like to read a lot. I like to read a lot too. Reading is another nice, relaxing thing that I enjoy.
Did you read more or read less on Kratom, and or once you're off? How did it affect your reading?
I barely read when I was on Kratom, nor did I write, nor did the longer that it went on, I feel like I lost touch with more and more of those things that I just talked about. And it just became, I don't know, I just didn't have the motivation or inspiration or desire to do the things that in this last year have come back and in a big way where I'm like, no, I really miss doing this. And now I actually want to, and I'm getting enjoyment out of it. And I can sit and focus on a book where with Kratom, I feel like I couldn't focus that well, at least towards the end, especially. In the beginning, it was like the opposite. I thought it was helping me focus,
Yeah,
but that all shifted a lot.
I assume that would be your answer, but I wanted to make sure. June 9th, 2024, you pulled the trigger and quit Kratom. So congratulations. We're so happy to celebrate a year off for you. Why don't you talk a little bit about what was going on just a year ago that got you to the point where you quit?
Yeah, so I just was like I was in a bad place mentally with how I felt about myself. I felt like I was harboring a secret from a lot of people. My partner knew about it, like my sisters, some of my close friends, not a lot of people. I wouldn't just share it with people. So I always felt like I had this like little secret and this like monkey on my back, and I was so sick of spending the money, and I come from a past of other addictions. And so I was just really fed up with myself that I had let it go on for as long as I had, and that I couldn't even sleep through the night without having to wake up and dose. And it was the first thing I thought about when I woke up in the morning. It was the last thing I thought about before I went to bed at night. And I was just so freaking tired of feeling like that and having that like shame over me and feeling like I didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't feel healthy.
I'm glad you were able to finally make that change. And it sounds like you were using Kratom for a long time, almost a decade. Why don't you talk about how it started off?
So it started off really innocently, actually. Out here in this area, there's a lot of hippies, and I'm friends with a lot of hippie types that are super into clean eating and supplements and using herbs instead of pharmaceuticals and all that kind of stuff. And a really good girlfriend of mine who I adore to this day, we were on a hike, actually, her, myself, my husband, and all of our kids and dogs, and it's like a beautiful summer day. We're up in the mountains hiking, and she pulls these little green capsules out of her pocket, and she's, "Oh, you guys ever heard of Kratom?" And we're like, "No." And she's, "Oh, you should try it. It's like this supplement, this like natural herb from Southeast Asia, and just here, try it." So we tried it, and that first time, I don't really remember feeling much because I feel it was probably like a pretty small amount that she gave us. But after that initial encounter, my husband and I were both like curious about it. And at that time, 10 years ago, if you looked it up on the internet, there wasn't any like negative information. So it was like we just decided to buy some at the head shop and try it again because we didn't really feel like we felt it. And we were curious about it at this point. And so that kind of started this whole like journey because we bought some, we started taking it a little bit here and there, both of us, my husband and I both. And when we started taking it a certain amount, yeah, you could feel it. And it gave me energy, I would say at first in the beginning. And also, I didn't recognize this at the time, but looking back on it, I can't believe that I didn't realize what was going on. But the fact that it tickles those opiate receptors in your brain, that's what was happening. And that's, I think, what drew us both into it more because we both come from that in our past. And so we just started like taking it and thinking like it was no big deal, not necessarily knowing that we were going to become dependent on it. And I would say there was a good like honeymoon period of maybe close to a whole year
Yeah.
where it wasn't like this bad thing where I felt withdrawal symptoms or like I couldn't not have it. You know what I mean? But then there did come that point, maybe like a year in, where I did feel some withdrawal symptoms. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. Like, holy shit, what have I gotten myself into kind of thing. But at that point, it was like, I was already invested in it. I was already carrying it with me everywhere and taking it every day. And it just built from there for years. And my husband ended up getting off of it way before me. And he dabbled with it. He would get off of it and get back on, but he didn't stick to it. I never stopped. Once I started, it was like legit the entire 9 years that from beginning to quitting, it was a never ending journey for me. And it was, I think the longer that you do it, I really, at least in my experience of watching his experience with it seems like the longer you do it, the harder it is to get off and the longer you suffer with the withdrawals and the mental side effects and like the anxiety and the pause and the sleeplessness and all that kind of stuff.
That's my observation too. But I think part of that, did you strict mostly to powder the whole time?
No, so it was just powder for years, years and years, just powder. And we would make our own capsules, go to the natural grocers and buy the big empty capsules, the biggest one they have. And we would just sit at the dining room table and pack those capsules and make like bags of them. He did the toss and wash. I could never do that. And then I would also buy capsules that's just more expensive. But we got to the point where we were buying kilos on the internet and all that jazz. But the head shop, the smoke shop that we went to, it actually is owned by a friend of mine. I know this girl, and I was friends with all the people who worked in the head shop. And there was this kid, Dougie, who worked there that was awesome. I love this kid, and we got along so well. And I remember I went in there one day and he was there and he was like, Jazz, you have to try this new product. Like everybody's switching to this. You just take one and it's super strong and it was an extract, and I didn't know. It was like when extracts were coming on the scene. Like I had done the little black OPMS tiny little shots. They had those for a minute, but all these other things were starting to come out, these other pills and extracts and stuff. And he gave me a couple. And what's so sad is he gave me two. The first time I took one, it made me so sick. I threw up, like I vomited, and it reminded me of other substances in the past. And I was like put off by it because it made me feel like shit. I was nauseous. It was really strong. It felt like I took a strong pain pill, maybe, or something. But my addict self, I held on to that other one and I gave it a few days. And then I tried the second one that he had given me and I really liked it. And it didn't make me throw up. I really liked it. And then unfortunately, that kid actually passed away really shortly after that. And he was younger than me. And I don't know what his autopsy report said, but it was just a really strange coincidence that right after those products came out that he was using, that he passed in his sleep. But that's another story altogether. I should have taken that as a red flag, I think, and I didn't because I was already, it had me. It was already, the claws were in there.
Many of us wish we would have all those little signals and flags along the way as it escalated. I guess we'll backtrack a little bit more and then circle back to this. It sounds like you had a previous addiction.
Yeah, so unfortunately, my dad is an addict. My mom and dad split up when I was 10, and he was out of the picture. And then it was a single mom with me and my sisters, and I was the oldest. And my mom wasn't really around. She worked and went to school full time. She was absent, and I had free reign to do whatever I wanted. And I started experimenting, smoking weed and drinking when I was like 12 years old. And then it just escalated from there. And I ended up becoming an IV heroin addict at the age of 15 years old.
Wow.
And that was a really heavy, dark part of my life. I'm very lucky that I made it through that because I OD'd multiple times. I was arrested so many times. I was in rehab. I was in a state hospital for 9 months when I was 16. I turned 17. in this state hospital setting, all for the heroin addiction. I was on and off methadone clinics as a teenager, trying to navigate that whole world. And again, also in trouble with the law throughout all that. So I was always on some type of probation and never able to like get it together because I was just so sucked into the heroin as such a young, I was a child. I look at my kids, I cannot imagine
It's
one of
not.
my kids doing something like that at that age. But I'm very blessed because I met my husband in California. Like I had fled Texas to get away from the drugs, and the lifestyle that I was living there was just so terrible. And I was heading for death. I was definitely like on that train. And so I ended up moving out to California and got pregnant unplanned, which was the biggest blessing that could have ever happened to me because that completely changed his life and my life, having a child and bringing a child into this world and becoming a mother. I wasn't ready for it. I was such a little mess, but I embraced it and I said, you know what? This is it. This is my chance. This is my time. It's now or never. I'm going to do this. I'm going to become a mom. I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to do right by this baby. And overall, that's what happened. We got it together and had this perfect little baby girl. And now she's going to be 23 years old next month and she's thriving. And I have a son that's 17 and he's thriving too. It's interesting how life puts things in your path, or like I almost feel like it was fate, like it was a fate thing that I met Cody and that we got pregnant like that without planning it, and that I decided to go through with having this baby, even though we didn't have any of the things like you normally want to have in place when you become parents for the first time. We just went with our what was in our hearts and what we felt like was right for us to do, and that was to proceed with the pregnancy. And I could have never asked for a better outcome.
I'm glad you survived that. And the only good thing about it, way back then, at least it was just heroin, and it was a
Right.
little bit safer than dealing with that today with the fentanyl and the tank
Oh,
supply.
totally. That terrifies me. If that would have been the case back then, we wouldn't be talking right now. I wouldn't be here.
And so, did you see yourself in recovery and abstaining from the hard drugs since back then?
Not exactly. I did abstain from the hard drugs for many years, but I'll be honest, like with some of the things that I do in my lifestyle, like I would still always experiment with psychedelics and cannabis, and I live in a legal state. It's my husband actually grew weed for 20 years out here. So that's always been in the picture, but not as a issue of abuse or concern. But I'm not fully 100% sober. I'm not like working a program where I'm in AA or NA and I'm abstaining from all substances. Although I will be honest with you and tell you that I think about doing that a lot, especially since I've come off the kratom, because I want to be my best, most authentic self. I want to be the healthiest version of myself, the most clear headed, and the most inspired and productive person that I can be. And I feel like really every substance, any and all substances, can hold that back from you a little bit or a lot.
Yeah. And our philosophy here is trying to help people to be kratom free. And we do have the belief that kratom, as opposed to some of those other plants that people use, whether it be cannabis or psychedelics, there's something about, not to demonize it, but kratom does have this addictive quality that is a little bit more pronounced, I believe, than some of those other things. They all can be addictive and they can all wreak havoc, but I think it's underappreciated what kratom can do. And that
I agree.
hence our podcast. And
Yeah.
how did your kratom use over time? I know you were originally only on powders and then the extracts came in. Like, how did things escalate from there?
I just started finding myself my tolerance to the extracts grew really quickly. Okay. And they're not cheap. And I was hiding it from my husband. He found out that I was using the extracts and he was really concerned about me and got very upset and wanted me to switch back to the powder. And I tried to, but it was like I couldn't even feel the powder anymore. And I didn't want to tell him that because it was like I was ashamed of that. I just felt like I didn't have control over that. And in that time of my life, like I felt alone and I felt like no one understood and that I was just dealing with this problem and I didn't have anybody I could really talk to about it that could relate, that knew what it felt like or that was going through a similar situation because I just didn't. And I didn't have community. It just felt very isolated. And that's what like made me really want to stop when I ended up stopping as well was just that feeling of like loneliness in that addiction of I just felt like a slave and like I couldn't stop and I didn't like being dishonest like that to my partner and I felt like I was being dishonest to myself. But it escalated just in terms of secrecy and more money being spent secretly and just doing things that made me feel really gross inside.
Yeah. When you were doing the powder, just so people can get a level set, how much were you using a day and how many times were you dosing on the powder?
I was dosing every 2 to 3 hours on the powder, and I would wake up in the morning and I would usually take 5 grams right when I woke up, and then throughout the day, like, literally every couple hours, I'm taking, like, another 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, depending on what's going on that day, depending on where I'm at. The powder started to give me I got the wobbles, which I ended up learning later is like a precursor to having a seizure
Yes.
from kratom. And I had no idea at the time. All I knew was like, I'm sitting there and I feel like I can't see straight. I'm dizzy. I feel like I'm going to fall over. I don't feel safe to drive. It was scary. It was a scary feeling, but it didn't make me take less. It didn't make me, I was just like, oh, this is weird. And this feeling sucks. And there would also be a lot of times on the powder where I would just get so nauseous from it. You don't eat in the morning because you want to feel your first dose. So then you're not eating like a normal person. And then the other things that happened in my body with the powder, my hair was falling out so much. I already have thin hair. I would take a shower and it would just be so shocking the amount of hair loss and my skin and my general energy level just was going so down. Like I felt so tired all the time. It wasn't giving me what it gave me in the beginning. It was like it completely flipped on me and was doing the opposite of what it gave me in the beginning that I liked about it. It was like all of that reversed completely over time. And then that's like why I think whenever I found the extracts, I ended up like diving into that so much because you could take so much less and it didn't feel like I don't know, it didn't feel like I was like bogging my insides down so much with all that powder, if that makes sense.
It definitely does. The advocates in the industry say, just do the powder and you'll be fine. But talking to so many quitters, what happens is in the powder, you just end up dosing multiple times a day and you're consuming a lot of plant matter. And when you're doing 5 grams, like 6 times a day, really wreaks havoc on your body. You're digesting all that. What year did you switch to the extracts? And after that, did you do extracts only or did you mix and match?
So it was around 2021 that the extracts came into the picture. And in the beginning, I was mixing, I was not just solely on the extracts, I was just dabbling with those and still using the plain leaf powder for the most part, but it just over a course of a couple months, maybe it just ended up being that I just went completely off the powder. And then, like I said, like trying to go back to just the powder, it was like I felt like I couldn't even feel it anymore. And I didn't know what I was taking either. Like the extracts, it's like I've learned a lot since I got off of kratom in this last year. I've learned so much. And it's just wild to me how little I knew about what I was ingesting all that time. So the extracts thing lasted pretty much really close to 3 years.
Okay. Okay. And did you try to quit before last year or did you have any previous attempts?
No, I thought about it all the time. I would make plans in my head. I would But there was always, I had such a fear of the withdrawals because I've been through withdrawals and I was terrified. And part of that was because of the Facebook Quitting Kratom support group pages, because I would see people's stories in there of them getting off of it and they were talking about their withdrawal like it was like as bad as opiate withdrawal. And that just scared the shit out of me. I'm just being honest. I was like, oh my God, like I have this job, I have kids, I have a house to take care of, I have all these responsibilities. Like, when am I supposed to get time to be sick for a week? You know what I mean? And not be able to do any of the things that I'm supposed to be doing. So it was like always in the back of my mind and weighing on me all the time. But until I just honestly got so fed up with the whole situation, myself, the money, the way I felt, the all of it. And my husband was really supportive. I had the ability to take a few days off work and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. I'm going to go for it. I'm just going to go cold turkey and we're going to see what happens. You know what I mean? But I had a really bad plan. Okay. So at first, I didn't have any community. I didn't know about there is a way out or any of the signal stuff in the meetings. I had no clue about any of that stuff. So I had no really good advice. I knew about the supplements that people suggest and like the mega dosing liposomal vitamin C and the magnesium and all these other things, right? I had seen all that on the internet and things like that. But I thought, this is crazy, but I thought that if I drank heavily, that I would just go somewhere else in my mind and be able to get these withdrawals. And I did do that for the first like week and it was so brutal. It was so brutal. And then I don't know, I think I must have posted something on the Quitting Kratom support Facebook page and someone reached out to me and invited me to a meeting. And then I also joined the Signal chats. And the first meeting I went to, I was like super sick. I was a total mess. And I was very honest. I told them all, I was like, yeah, I've just been drinking straight tequila every day. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing? That's supposed to make withdrawals so much worse. And I'm like, it is. I felt like such an idiot, to be honest with you, but they weren't wrong. I really did not do myself a service by going that route, but I was just so desperate and I thought, I'm just going to try this. And I did make it. I made it. Like I got through it. But honestly, I wish that if I could go back and do it again, I would have left the alcohol out of it because that was not fun.
I'm glad you found that support. And it's great to hear somebody that did it their first try. I've only met a couple people, but it is possible. And I do want, if you're listening, there is a little bit of, you can psych yourself out by looking at the social forums. If you compare, some people do have really bad withdrawals. That's not to undermine their experience. And then other people have moderate withdrawals. And then other people have, it's not too bad. And it's a lot easier than they thought. But don't let the fear of withdrawals prevent you from quitting.
Right.
At least try it for 72 hours, see how bad it's going to be for you. I'm glad you found that support. And so how did that first week or two go?
It was really rough. It was brutal. I don't know if it was just from using for as long as I did or what, but TMI, but I had the worst GI issues and those lasted for me for well over 2 months. I actually got so sick that I went to the doctor to have blood work done and like they did a stool sample because I thought that I had permanently done damage to my body that was from the kratom that was like irreversible potentially.
Wow.
And I lost almost 20 pounds. I really couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I had crippling anxiety. Going to work was so hard. Every time that I would have to go to work, the anxiety was like awful. I just wanted to run the other direction. I just wanted to like stay far away from people and the constant sneezing and yawning and watery eyes. And I was in the bathroom 50 times a day. And I don't want to scare anybody, but that was just my experience. I really did a number on my body and I paid for it. And I was just so determined though, Charlie. I was so determined to be done with that shit. I was like, I'm gonna whatever it takes. Like if I'm going to go through hell for 3 months. I'm going to go through hell for 3 months. And it wasn't like that. I would have good days. That's the thing about it. I remember maybe like my 10th or 11th day, I went to see the Rolling Stones in Denver, and it was so incredible. And I bawled my eyes out. I felt so much emotion. It was just this amazing experience to be at a concert and not be like numbed out on Kratom after having been numbed out on Kratom for so long. But yeah, the first couple weeks were really challenging for me. I cried a lot. I had that time period where I was just an emotional wreck because all my feelings had been I didn't feel my feelings. I didn't feel my feelings on Kratom. I really hardly ever cried over anything. I was like flat, emotionally flat. And I'm a pretty sensitive, empathetic person, and I've been through a lot in my life, and I would cry at the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? But that was just a little short bit of it. That went away as well. All the things that I went through were so worth it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I truly wish that I would have done it sooner. And I liked what you said earlier about not letting fear of withdrawal stop you from trying to stop Kratom, because if I would have known, like, yeah, it sucked, but I did it, I could have been free a lot sooner than I was. I sometimes regret not trying it sooner because I had so much fear in my mind that it held me back. And in retrospect, I wish I would have made that effort years earlier.
Yeah. And well, when you quit, how much extracts were you taking? What did you jump from?
So they were bottles of 10 capsules, and I only would take one at a time, but it was to the point where they were like $35 a bottle for these 10 pills. And I was going through at least a bottle and a half a day, like 12 to 15 of those capsules a day. And when I did jump, I had tried to like cut my dose down a little bit. I was trying to push myself and make the time between doses longer and things of that nature. But that doesn't work at night. Like at nighttime, I would have to wake up every 2 hours and pop one of those things to be able to go back to sleep. So I really jumped from like a full dose. I really didn't taper much. I just went from taking what I had been taking every day consistently for a couple years to just bam, nothing.
Yeah, that's if you can only go a couple hours at night and you have to dose, that's a pretty good sign that you're up there,
Yeah.
your dependency. To be nosy, how did you manage the money with spending that much money on Kratom?
I used my credit card too much, for one thing. I make decent money. I also would always find ways to get deals at this shop because there was like little tricks that I knew where I could get deals. So I never would pay full price. I would always have some type of coupon, or you spend this much, you're going to get this much off, or you pay with cash, it's 25% off. That was the big one for me, was if you paid with cash.
Yeah.
So I try to pay with cash as often as possible because that way I was saving 20% every time. The credit card was more of a last resort if I was waiting on getting paid and I didn't have much left in my account for that week or whatever. But I sacrificed other things. Like if I think about what I could have done with all that money that I was spending on Kratom, it's pretty infuriating. I could have had a nicer car, or I could have painted my house, or gone on this trip, or things like that that I was not thinking about in the moment because I was just worried about taking care of that addiction.
It's nice to be free from that now.
Yes.
That first month, was there anything that helped with your symptoms the most? A couple tips for withdrawals?
Yeah, so it was June of last year. I would say getting out in the sun, even though like sometimes I didn't want to be out in the sun, it was so healing for me. I have a trampoline in my backyard, and every day I would lay out on that trampoline in my bathing suit and I would just blast music and lay in the sun and just soak up the sun. And it gave me something. It felt so healing and like rejuvenating. I drank a ton of water. I was taking a lot of supplements. I ordered a lot of supplements that I found out about through the process. Some of them I didn't jive with as much as others. Like a lot of people like that DLPA stuff. And I tried that and I felt like that made my anxiety worse. I never had anxiety, mind you. I've never had an issue with anxiety until coming off Kratom. It's been a trip because I have had just a lot of new experiences with that feeling that I'm not familiar with, and managing that can be really tough. So there was things I had to cut out, like caffeine. I've always been a coffee drinker, love coffee, drink coffee every morning all the time. I don't drink coffee anymore. I can't. Even now, like sometimes I can, but I'll make a cup and I'll drink like maybe half of it and I'm like, no, I can't. So there was things that I just had to cut out. I would say also just being active, like breaking into a sweat, getting outside and just like getting your blood pumping, taking my dogs for a walk, trying to just really tune into a really good movie or show. Or I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to your podcast. I started listening to other sobriety podcasts. And honestly, There Is a Way Out community, like that group and that having that community, I can't say enough about how much that helped me, because I did feel so alone before that. And yeah, I had my husband who's been through it and he knows, but he's just one person and he works. We both have things going on. So I could just check into this thing on my phone, and I was in the meetings every chance I could be in the meetings. I was talking to people on the side. I was forming bonds and relationships with people, getting advice from people. And I also leaned on God. I would just cry out and scream sometimes, and like in my car driving or out in my backyard, and just begging for the strength to get through just like the next 5 minutes. And it helped me. And screaming to music on 10, just and feeling all those feelings, like letting those feelings just wash over me, and like sitting with that stuff and processing it and like just letting it happen. You know what I mean? I feel like I needed to do that. It was just part of the process.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you found that community. I think you might lead a meeting, or I know you've done an open talk. You're on the speaker webpage. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I got involved with it, like I said, maybe 10 days into my withdrawals, and instantly started forming bonds with these people. And back at that time, there was, I think, 3 meetings a week, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night or something like that. Now there's 3 meetings a day, every day.
Wow.
And I'm actually on the board. We started a nonprofit for quitting kratom support. And I'm not one of the officers, but I am one of the board members. So we meet monthly to discuss what we're doing, our vision, where we want to go with this. We're still a new organization. It's only been a few months, but everybody is very committed, and the support that is there is amazing. And I do host meetings every other week on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's tough for me though, because I'm on Mountain Time and the meeting times are at 6 a.m. my time, 10 a.m. my time, and 6 p.m. my time. And since I work in a restaurant and I usually close, I'm never awake at 6 a.m. I'm barely awake at 10 a.m. And then at 6 at 6 p.m., I'm either at work, or if I'm at home, it's I want to make dinner and hang out with my family. But in those early months, I was on the meetings pretty much every single chance I could be. And it's just been so awesome to be a part of it, and also to then support other people that are coming into that space, because the need is so great. And these products that are coming out, all this 7-OH and all that shit, it's scary. And a lot of people, that's probably why you have so many guests that are going the mat route, because it's that intense that they don't feel like they can do it without medical assistance. And I have no judgment whatsoever. It's just sad to me that it's a legal, unregulated thing that any kid could get their hands on.
Yeah, the proliferation of those isolate products. Yeah, it's exploded this year. Just for any listeners out there, that's www.kratomquitters.com. And that's wonderful that there's meetings 3 times a day, every day of the week, and exciting to hear how that work's growing.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. There's an international group now. So we have people from South Africa and Austria and Germany and people that are all over the world that are finding us. And thank you for mentioning that. Yes, kratomquitters.com has all of those links and resources to all of those things. And for anybody who's listening, it's a great resource for community and support and recommendations on tapering schedules, supplements, all of the above.
Yeah, you don't have to do it alone anymore. And not that you ever had to, but there's even, you can see people, you can look people in the eyeballs. That's was a big change for me. Like I was very active on the Reddit and a little bit on Facebook, but when you start to get know people's names and you talk to them, it really makes a big difference. And because like you were so isolated, you talked about how you were so isolated in your addiction, and that was a big deal for me too. I felt so. That's why I started this podcast, was because I felt really lonely, and the Reddit alone didn't seem like it was doing it. So I wanted to talk to people. If there had been 3 meetings a day, 7 days a week, this podcast might not exist or this format. But are you guys doing the in-person gathering this summer still? Is that still?
No, we were working on that and we had talked about it quite a bit, but the place that we wanted to do it, which was the Gulf Shores in Alabama, the cost of all of the like hotels and stuff just it skyrocketed in between like the beginning of us making these plans and deciding on a location and kind of a timeline when would work best. And it was supposed to be in July, late July of this year. But by the time we all coordinated and started looking at the cost to get the hotel rooms and stuff, it was just a little too much and it didn't work out for everybody's situation. So it's definitely still going to happen, but it's not happening when we thought it was going to happen.
What are you doing today to maintain a kratom-free lifestyle? What does that look like for you?
I still try to stay really active with that community. To be honest with you, Charlie, I am the type of person who, once I make up my mind about something that I'm done with it, I'm pretty done with it.
Nice.
Okay. I don't really get triggered to want to use Kratom. In the whole year that I've been off of it, in the very early days, weeks, there was a couple, it would be triggering for me to drive by the smoke shop where I always got it from. They ended up getting forced to move to a different location, which was really great for me because I never have to see it anymore.
Yeah.
But like overall, it's like with cigarettes. I was a cigarette smoker for 30 years and I quit smoking in March 28th, 2 years ago. And it's like, I'm done. I want to be healthy. I'll tell you right now, just my mental health and my physical health and my relationships are so much more important to me than going back to something that I already know everything there is to know. Like there's nothing new under the sun for me with that stuff. And I'll tell you what else is really helpful is in the meetings whenever I see someone go back out and they relapse and then they come back and they tell us how awful it was and how much it sucked and how it wasn't worth it and it didn't feel good and all these negative things, right? It's never like they're coming back being like, oh, yeah, I'm so glad I relapsed. You know what I mean? It's never that. It's the opposite. And so that gives me a lot of motivation too, because truthfully, yeah, finding out about all these new products out on the market, that is where my brain naturally tends to go, oh, I wonder what that feels like. You know what I mean? But I'm 44 years old. I have done it all. And I just want to I want to be free. I want to be free. And I know where those roads lead you.
I can confirm, yeah, we have some past guests that return to Kratom. We have all sorts of listeners, and I haven't gotten a report where things got better. But before we talk about some fun stuff, were you immersed in Kratom culture? Like, did you believe in the marketing and kind of that it was all natural?
No, I was totally an advocate in the beginning. I turned on my sisters to it. I turned on my dad to it. I was like, oh, you guys got to try this stuff. I love it. It's great. It does this. And I remember when I first heard about the FDA potentially trying to ban kratom, and this was like years and years ago. And I would be at the smoke shop and talking to the kids that worked there about that and just enraged, couldn't believe that they were going to try to do that, oh, it's big pharma for sure. They don't want people having a natural way to get off opiates or a natural painkiller or a natural sleep aid. And I drank the Kool-Aid hard, 100%. I was fully on that bus of thinking it was this great thing, this like wonderful answer to so many problems until it wasn't. And I guess until it started to turn on me and I started to like just figure out the truth from what it was doing to me personally, I started to have a kind of a change of heart about that. And then it started to happen where I was seeing people passing away, like these moms losing their kids, and their kid was like a healthy non-drug user, and this was the only thing in their system in the autopsy. And then I'm going, oh my God, what the heck is this about? You know what I mean? And stuff like that. And it's built since then a lot. Now you can find so much more information, I feel, about the potential risks involved. And the Reddit's a great resource for that stuff too. But at the same time, there's still all those marketers out there and the vendors that are going hard, and they're sucking people in left and right every day.
They are. And it's a nuanced thing that I'm sure neither of us want to throw people into jail for possession of kratom, but
Right.
and it probably is a little safer than buying stuff off the street that might be tainted with fentanyl, but it's not like all miracles and sunshine and roses like some people want to
No.
paint it. And I met many of those moms and seen the death certificates and the toxicology reports, and it's kratom only, and they're 30-year-olds. And I know there's some science that's missing what is a lethal dose. We're not exactly sure what it is because it's not the same in mice as it is in humans. But anybody that's saying that nobody's never died from kratom, that's just not true. It's just simply not true. And there's just a lot more risk, and it's a lot more, they insist that it's not addictive. It certainly is. Anyway, now to something a little bit more enjoyable. Why don't you talk about what you like on the music scene?
I'm pretty open-minded with music. I love music, and I always have. I actually started playing guitar when I was 11 and took lessons for many years. And my son is now a really accomplished guitar player, which is so
Nice.
awesome to see. He's an amazing bluegrass musician and plays locally with a lot of other kids in our town. And when I was younger, I was super into, it was the 90s. I was obsessed with grunge, Nirvana. I loved all that stuff. I got into The Cure. I had my like punk rock goth phase. And then whenever I moved to California and met my husband, he was a huge Deadhead. And at that point, Jerry was dead, right? And this was in like 99 and he had passed in 95, but there was still a thriving Grateful Dead music scene going on with the remaining members that had their own bands. And I ended up going to a show on New Year's Eve in Oakland at Kaiser Auditorium, which the Dead played at many times. And it was Phil Lesh's band with Warren Haynes and Jimmy Herring and Rob Baracco and John Molo, the Phil Lesh Quintet. And it was life-changing, this show for me. It was the coolest experience, just the Deadheads being in the Bay Area, like ground zero for all that stuff. And I got really into it. And we actually went on tour and followed Phil's band around, went all the way from California to New York and back, and just had this like epic adventure. And yeah, I definitely would consider myself a huge Deadhead, even though I never saw Jerry. I have seen hundreds of shows and some really amazing shows over the years. And I also love Fish. There's a lot of battle between the Fish heads and the Deadheads, but then there's also a lot of common ground where everybody agrees. And I mean, I love country music. I love a lot of hip hop, old school hip hop, but music is my thing. I love going to see live music. I just went and saw a show on Saturday night. There's this venue up in the mountains up here that's like over 100 years old, and the stage is right on the river, and it's this really cool spot to see music at. And saw a really fun show there on Saturday night and saw a bunch of friends. And music is like my hobby. It's like my fun, like thing that I like to do and go spend money on and travel for and things like that.
And this is a common experience when you got off Kratom. Does the music hit you a little bit different now?
Oh yeah, the music hits so much better. It's incredible. Like I was telling you earlier, like going to that Rolling Stones show, I had never seen the Stones before and I love the Stones. I grew up on them and there's a lot of nostalgia there and just it's just like your life soundtrack type of thing and to get to go to that show and be present in that moment, I literally was like in tears because I was overcome with emotion of just actually like feeling the music like that. It was awesome. And that's how it is now. I feel completely different when I go see music now as opposed to being on Kratom for sure.
I really want to know the science behind that because it's so many talk about that experience.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So our music password, I'm a little bit older than you, about 10 years. So I did the Cure and the goth thing in the 80s, but I skipped grunge and went right to the Grateful Dead. So
Nice.
I got to see Jerry a couple of times, but
Nice.
my daughter's 16 and she's into grunge. And so I'm returning to it 30 years.
That's cool.
Yeah. How would you describe your life now that you're Kratom free, a year of sobriety?
So there's some things that I procrastinated on doing. It took me a while. I started seeing a therapist about 2 months ago because there's a reason why I got sucked back into addiction. There's trauma from my childhood. There's things that have happened that, make me who I am today and make me have that tendency to want to escape from how I feel or forget about something or just not feel, right? But that's not what I really want, especially now. And so I was intending on starting therapy way sooner than 2 months ago, but it just is what it is. I think I had a fear there as well of rehashing the past and digging up old skeletons in the closet kind of thing. But I did decide to do that. And I'm really happy that I did. I like the therapist and we're getting to know each other. There's a lot to unpack for sure. And I also joined a gym. I used to work out a lot back years ago and loved doing like yoga and just cardio and weights and just being in the gym and feeling like healthy and like I'm doing something good for my physical health and my longevity and just my overall well-being. So I went and joined a gym not too long ago and I'm happy I did that and I I guess I would describe my life as I'm still even a year later I'm still trying to figure certain things out because I think with doing something for almost a decade it really does a number on you. I think it does change a lot of things with your brain chemistry and things have to like rebuild and renormalize and my body and mind had to find its homeostasis again. And I didn't know this, but I heard that the whole pause thing, the post-acute withdrawal syndrome can last up to a year and over a year for some people. And so I definitely have days when I struggle still with just I don't know how to explain it. Just it's not all peachy keen all the time. I feel very strong in my sobriety from kratom. I feel very confident in it, but I am still working out some things within myself and that's an ongoing work in progress.
Yeah, and this is purely anecdotal, just talking to a lot of people. But I do think kratom, and I'd like to see studies about this. I think it does have a longer tail on the pause side, and there's just more ramifications mental health wise. Just talking to hundreds of people, needs to be research, but that's just my observation and talking to people as guests and then going to the meetings.
I agree. Yeah, it's very interesting and I would love to see the science on it too and I hope that there's work being done towards that because this is a huge multi-billion dollar a year industry now and it's just grown exponentially and it needs to be studied and we need to understand it so that there's concrete data that can be shown to people that we can say, hey, this is why this should be regulated like this, or this is why maybe this product should be banned. And I'm not saying kratom overall should be banned because I, like you, don't want to see people getting thrown in jail for possessing kratom. But then it's hard. It's like I can see both sides of the coin with it because it can be innocent for some people. Not everybody falls prey to it and becomes addicted to it. And for some people, I guess that's their journey with it. But from what I've seen in the different forums on the socials and in the there is a way out stuff, it's pretty brutal for a lot of people and it's highly addictive. I hate when people say it's not addictive. That's a freaking joke.
Yeah. 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 I don't know what the policy solution is. I know a wild west of unregulated isn't the solution, but
Right.
a couple more last questions. Did you have any setbacks in the last year that you had to get through?
Yes. Yes. Actually, I've had a lot of setbacks that would have probably caused a lot of other people to just throw in the towel, I would say. So the first thing that happened was our dog, Stella, we had to put her down. She was just shy of 15 years old. That happened in late July, so pretty early in my quitting. And that was really tough. We love our dogs so much. They're part of our family. And she was such a sweet girl. She was an Australian Shepherd. And that was a really difficult thing. And then my niece, who is the same age as my daughter, has a neurological disease that she was born with that there's no cure for. And she had a tennis ball sized tumor in her brain that had to be removed in October of last year, which happened out here in Denver at Children's Hospital. She is 22 years old, but they still did it at Children's, but that's a different story. But that was extremely terrifying for our family. Obviously, there's the possibility of death. So that was a huge, scary, rough time for my family. My sister and I are very close, and just trying to navigate all that was really hard. And then right after my niece's brain surgery, my sister, her mother, was in a terrible car accident that was not her fault, and her car was totaled. I get a phone call. She's in the ER in the next town. I'm racing over there, not knowing what kind of state I'm going to find her in. She was pretty banged up and is just now, like 7, 8 months later, getting back to some normalcy with her health effects that she had from that car accident. So that was really challenging too, because I'm, like I said, I'm very close to my sister. So I'm there for her and I'm always going to be there for her. But that was a really tough time to deal with. And I would say those are the three most challenging things that have happened. There's always something. Life is always throwing something at us because there's been a lot of wins too. There's been a lot of good things, but then there's been a lot of challenges where I just had to suck it up and learn how to get through hard times without turning to kratom and numbing myself out.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a lot to go through, but it's good for listeners to hear that you can get through stuff like that. Stay away from kratom. It was a coping mechanism for many of us, but you can stay off of it and get through that stuff.
Absolutely.
And Stella's a great name. My kitty cat's named Stella. Maybe I'll indulge and throw in that we'll close out this episode with some kind of concert rendition of Stella Blue.
Yes, that's great.
What's one piece of advice you'd offer someone who's thinking about quitting kratom?
I would say just try, just do it, just go for it. And what's the worst that can happen? If you don't succeed, then try again. That's the biggest thing that if I could give myself a piece of advice, it would be to just take that risk, even though it feels scary, that we can do hard things. We're stronger than we think we are. And if you're over it like I was, and you're sick of the runaround and chasing your tail and just feeling stagnant, it is so freaking worth it to just go through that blip of time of like discomfort and feeling like shit. Yeah, it sucks, but we're strong. We're built for strong things. We're resilient as human beings. And I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit. And I would say if you have that desire and you're tired of living that life, just make the attempt. Just start trying and see where it takes you.
Great. Before we say goodbye, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you think we should share with listeners?
I don't know. Oh, I think we did pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I think we covered everything here. Let's see. So yeah, you're not alone with the GI issues. It took me it didn't last a couple of months. It was a couple of weeks. But what got me through is I fasted for a couple of days, and then I had some kefir. If you have with the probiotics and the yogurt, and finally I got through it after that. But it does.
Yeah, fasting is really good for you. Fasting has so many health benefits.
Yeah, and I like to eat, so that was a little, but because that stuff just really messes up your stomach and your digestion.
Yeah, big time. It really it worked me. I don't know, man. It was intense. And I lost all that weight and I can't gain it back. It's the weirdest thing. I was already small and I can't gain the weight back. My appetite came back. I eat like a normal person now, but I don't know. I feel like it physically affected me in like a lot of intense ways that I don't know is common for like other people.
Yeah, I haven't heard of long term with a lot of people. A couple of people I've heard about it, but usually people bounce back. And I guess maybe it's a nice superpower in a restaurant that otherwise you feel like your health has returned.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've been feeling really good overall for a while, for a long time. Like I said in the beginning, I would have good days too, peppered in. I definitely had those pink cloud moments and things like that, but it was just such a roller coaster. It was like very unpredictable. But I would say after the 2-month mark, when my stomach finally settled down, I started to like level out in other ways, like emotionally and mentally and with the anxiety and all of those things that I dealt with the first 2 months. It all just calmed down and I found myself being like, okay, like this is how I feel now. And I feel good. I feel like a normal person.
Thank you for sharing your journey and congrats again for 1 year. And we're honored to have you on our 150th episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. I really appreciate it. It's fun.
Same here.
All years go by. They melt into a dream. A broken angel sing from undertow. In the end, there's just a song. It's crying up the night through all the broken dreams and vanished dreams. Still a still a when all the cards are down. There's nothing left to see. It's just a paper and broken dreams. There's nothing